were very vociferous and very noisy during the week. Was that just to get under Lauren Price's skin?
Psychological warfare is something what they do very well in America in all sports, where it's NFL, where it's boxing, basketball. But over here you try it, then you're like, oh, what's he doing that for?
Turki Alalshikh aligning himself with Dana White, TKO, and announcing this boxing league. I think it's just an interesting landscape and an inevitability because they can do it in boxing because it's less structured. Dana, who said it, the boxing is broken. When you hear that, Joe, do you agree with him?
No, I don't agree at all. When you look at 2024 and the fights that I've delivered for the boxing fans, the big fights are happening.
Listen, the politics of the sport was the reason the sport was broken. It wasn't broken. I think broken's the wrong word.
Lawrence Okolie, 1 round at heavyweight. He's number one in WC.
I know, but listen, but he has that confidence, he has that swagger. I wanted to try and break him, and I couldn't break him. And I thought, nah, you've got more resolve than people give you credit for.
And you say that Lawrence is the real deal. That must mean that you have an expectation of him potentially winning a world title.
I wouldn't be training him if I didn't.
Welcome to episode 111 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Joining us today is one of the best trainers around, Joe Gallagher. Nice to see you, mate.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Simon. Hi, Spencer.
Welcome. Nice to see you. We're going to talk about all the events at the Royal Albert Hall on Friday. Before I get into that, I just want to ask on a personal level how you are, mate. How are you doing health-wise?
Yeah, I'm okay. Just business as normal. There's deflect. Just gone through my second cycle of chemo. I'm not on no medication for a week now. And
you look well.
Yeah, thank you. It's people say I look well and how are you and everything else, but like I've said to everything, we've just got to get on with it. There's fights to be won in outside the ring this year, and that's it. And I wouldn't know if I didn't have boxing. Like my daughter said to me, we're retiring. What would I be doing? Sat at home watching
That's what I was
stuff?
going to ask you. I mean, obviously boxing must be a good... I mean, I had cancer 18 months ago. I had prostate cancer and I had significant surgery, so I know some of your journey. But it's also, to some extent, being distracted and being focused on other things is probably a good thing as well, isn't it?
100% keeps your mind occupied, and I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. I just want to treat normal and keep forward, like you say. I had diagnosed with the bowel, and then not long after, then they said the liver was worse than the bowel, and now they've come back last week. Now they found something, a cyst on my thyroid. So, listen, it is what it is. But while we're still functioning, we just got to crack on. There's some big fights, like saying Natasha, Jonas, and now we've got Lawrence Okolie. So, and the team, and the squad, and the gym have been 100% supportive. Brilliant. So, thank you.
Well, everyone's behind you, mate.
Thank you.
Right. Talk about Tasha. I expected Tasha to win that fight. You didn't. You thought Lauren Price would have too much. Where did it go wrong for Tasha on Friday, Joe?
I can't say that Natasha did too much wrong, because everything that I asked her to do, she did do. And a little bit what Lauren Price said, she was just a little bit too quick and a little bit too sharp. And I had reservations last year. Obviously, we beat Michaela Meyer. I wanted Natasha to try to tie her then. Then she was out for a year. She came back December, fought Habazan. I thought that shut the ring rust off. She looked all right. But she was just that little split second, and Lauren was just as Natasha was about to throw, knew what was coming and just gone out of it. And when we managed to get her in round 3 into sort of a trade-off where we got the better of, we won that round. And the last 2 rounds, we got Lauren where we wanted to, which was up close, hitting body and head and sitting in the pocket. And Lauren, when she was ahead, her tail was up and it was hard to catch her. And then we fell into Lauren's trap that we had to win rounds, and Lauren's tail was up and she had to sit back and just counter-punch, really. So
I think, Joe, you had the tactic spot on. I was listening to what you were telling her in the corner, and you were telling her to sort of move out of range. And she was doing that. As Lauren was attacking, she was moving out of range. But I think the missing element of all of it was that she wasn't coming back in time. She was just too slow coming back with the shot. She was making her miss. She was sort of setting it up and then not coming back. And I think it was just the speed of hand, speed of foot, really, of Lauren at this stage of their careers that made the difference in the whole fight. Because tactically, I think Tash had it spot on with what she was doing, but she was just missing that first bit. She was making her miss, but then not making her pay. That's what I think was the difference between...
A couple of times, because Lauren was coming in on the second jab, I was saying to Natasha, just drop and walk her onto the backhand, and we were pickpocketing her early on, and she was walking into big shots, and she did in the last round. But once Lauren was onto that, because she was coming forward, she thought, nah, I'm going on the back foot here, and listen, fair play to it, was all Lauren Price.
Was Lauren better than what you expected? Do you think she performed better? Because, I mean, she's sort of coming into her own now, isn't she, Lauren? In the last couple of fights, it all seems to have slipped together. Like, timing was a little bit out when she first started out in her first couple of fights, but it's all come together now. She's going to be a tough girl to beat.
No, I don't think so. I think there's more rounded fighters out there that I think will give Lauren Price. No disrespect to Lauren, she beat Natasha Jonas, but I think there's some good fighters out there that are really give her a good fight. And like Natasha said, yeah, Natasha's the best name in her record, but she wouldn't be the best name in her record, and that's it. The jury's still out. Do you know what I'm saying? But listen, she did well. She did what she had to do. Fair play to her and that team of Kraken and that. So good luck with her career.
Was it just a reality about being unkind, Joe, of a 40-year-old fighter at a certain stage in their career now coming up against the younger, fresher fighter? And I'm not suggesting that Tasha got old overnight in the ring. I'm just simply saying that you're at a stage now where she is 40 years of age. And she's coming up against a younger, fresher fighter. Was it just simply a case of that? Would a peak Natasha Jonas have beaten Lauren Price?
Well, I'd say so, and I'll back her all the time, 100%. I want Natasha to try. She's 41 in, 2 months' time. And I remember training Anthony Crolla for his last fight. His camp was brilliant, and everyone's going, what are you retiring for? What are you retiring for? He came back after round 2 and 3, he goes, I'm shattered. Right. I just got it. And in the end, he was having a 10-round slugfest with some Spanish opponent that was brought in to make the job. And I'm not making them type of excuses for Natasha, but it comes a point where there's a little bit where you're just a little bit off the ball. I think.
Well, that's what I was looking at, Joe, when I was watching the show. You look at it and you go, Natasha knew what she had to do, but she was just just a split second off the pace.
Just a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger. It's called pulling the trigger. Just a little bit hesitant. When you're rising, it's not. And I've seen people say about football when they're on about Casemiro.
Can you only see that, Joe, in a real live fight rather than inspiring when you're building up to a fight? You must have had an expectation of Tasha going into that fight because you were very vociferous and very noisy during the week. Was that just to get under Lauren Price's skin, to get her at it and get her off balance?
Yeah, it was, because I'd looked and watched the documentary that they did, and then I seen how she'd done well at kickboxing, football, and then she made a comment like, and I've had a few headbutts at playing the centre half. I thought, wow, there's a little ticking time bomb in there that could come apart, and I want to know, can you control being out of control? And because she's had such an easy, free run, and she's never been in it, I've just thought, no, I'm going to try try and get in her way in something. And from what I heard back, she was like, was upset over a few things, but that was it. That's your job, and that's it. We were going to war, me and Natasha, and I wanted to take the heat away from Natasha, and I wouldn't say set about her. That it's not bullying, but it's a sport, and I think psychological warfare is something what they do very well in America in all sports, where it's NFL, where it's boxing, basketball. But over here, you try it, then you're like, oh, what's he doing that for, or doing that? But it's all part of getting that little
psychological
And
Joe, talk to us about the scales as well, because there was that issue there at the weigh-in, wasn't there, with Natasha? She weighed in with all her clothes on, but the scales weren't calibrated. Can you explain a little bit about that? Like, because they have to be calibrated by the Boxing Board of Control. What happened with that in the end?
Well, nothing. I'm still waiting for the calibration certificate for that day. The sticker that was on it was the 9th of January. Right. And here we are at this prestigious event where the promotional company have hired out this prestigious venue, paid fighters for this brilliant fight, unification fight. Yet we couldn't have a pair of calibrated scales to get the weight right. And the people on the weighing scales before it were saying, she weighed light. So when I hear Lauren Price is struggling with weight, and the opposite would have happened the other way around, I'm obviously on them scales. I want to see her weigh in.
But they didn't get calibrated, though, did they?
No, there wasn't a sticker on it. It was 9th of January. Yeah. It wasn't.
So how did you overcome that?
Well, they didn't. Obviously, you see me. I stopped Big Mo from announcing
That's what I'm saying.
But they ran ahead of it. So I sort of like said in the rules meeting, I said, well, listen, God forbid anything happens to these girls tomorrow night, because technically, and I said to governing bodies, these haven't weighed in on calibrated scales. So insurance-wise or anything else-wise, good luck with it all. If anything does go wrong, not wishing anything on. Obviously, good luck that nothing did go wrong. But these are the small things where boxing, time and time again, gives it its own black eye in the sport.
Going back to Tasha, I mean, I was trying to pick up on what you were saying there. Are you suggesting that maybe it's now time for Tasha to think about stopping?
I did last year, but that's not because I've always wanted Natasha to go out at the top, and beating Michaela Meyer, the blue chip, it was like, go, you've nothing more to achieve, you've done it all. But she's like, no, I still want to do this and that, and she wanted to fight Katie and Michaela. So Tasha's at home now, she's got to have a holiday, come back at home, and we'll have a think about it, but she knows how I feel, and if she wants to carry him. My only thing with this, Simon, is there's no medical evidence, because women's boxing there hasn't been so many female fighters, but there's nothing to show me a female fighter at age 41 and what her mental health and body is like at age 55, 60, especially a woman, Natasha Jonas, that started off at 130 and went up to 154, 147 and has been out of a weight division for the last 2 years in training, sparring bigger women, fighting bigger women. No one knows that, and that's my main concern, Simon.
What did you think of Hannah Rankin's comments about the all-female cards and the feeling that ultimately it's something that she doesn't particularly agree enables the promotion of the sport to get quite the eyes on the prize? She's sort of suggesting that having an all-female card disadvantages the level of attention that it gets. Where are you on that?
I don't know what the viewing figures were for Saturday night, but you had big events in the past where we've had Savannah Marshall, Clarissa Shields, Baumgartner, Riakporhe. What it does is gives an undercard where, hypothetically, we've just got to look at the events that have happened in Saudi recently, the big shows there, the Anthony Joshua shows here, the Dwyer shows. How many females are on the card? There must be one female on it. Yeah. But having a whole female card gives the likes of Caroline Dubois, obviously gets it, but the ones that are on the undercard, some attention, some span, that helps them promote their career with sponsors.
But what she's saying is by having a mixed card, it brings more eyes on the prize, which gets bigger audience.
I disagree because that one you're talking about there, the one that they had at the O2 with Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, I think that hit 2.2 million views, if I'm right. It was one of Sky's highest viewed boxing shows. So
you don't think she has a point?
No, I don't think she has a point in that. I just think that, you know...
Right.
I think it's the appetite of the fights that are on there and the fighters that are on there.
But I do feel that's already in play because Natasha won a world title on the Smith-Eubank bill, and I think Hannah Rankin's fought on the male cards, and there is females that have been on the male cards. So it's not something that there isn't. There is.
Yeah, it's a very... I mean, when I went to the Clarissa Shields Savannah Marshall fight, which Alicia Brooke-Garden fought Michaela Mayer on, it was a very different audience, wasn't it? It was a very, very different
family-orientated audience, for sure.
I want to ask you, Joe, about the Katie Taylor-Amanda Serrano 3 fight, where Serrano's got a little bit upset about the idea that they agreed in principle to fight 3-minute rounds, and now it's gone back to the standard 2-minute round mentality. Where are you on this debate about women's boxing and going to a 3-minute round rather than a 2-minute rounds?
Well, there's two things. I've always said for them big fights at the weekend like Natasha fought, they should be 12-2s, not 10-2s.
Say that again?
They should be 12 2-minute rounds for them big events, the unification and titles, or 10 3-minute rounds.
Right.
Because I feel Natasha's style is more suited to 3 minutes. I think the 2 minutes still for Lauren even. She's coming out that amateur system. Katie Taylor's style is still, I wouldn't say it's amateur, but there is that shoe shining, quick punches, land a combination, nick the round type of thing. So I can see where Serrano thinks, well, if I have 3-minute rounds, I'll have 3-minute rounds and we'll do 10 threes. And I wanted Tasha to fight Lauren Price over 3-minute rounds, 10 threes, but Ben wouldn't have it.
Do you think we'll see more knockouts? Because that's what the argument is that you're going to see more conclusive outcomes in fights. And then you've got the debate about how palatable that is for an audience to see. And again, I'm not getting into this argument about whether I think it's right or wrong, about seeing women knock one another out.
I know that we'll see more knockouts because that last minute in a round, Joe will back me on this. Them first 2 minutes, but it's that last minute when the fatigue really sets in. And if you're doing 10 3-minute rounds, 12 3-minute rounds, or whatever it is, for those girls, that last minute is going to be significant and you will see more knockouts. Do we want to see that? Probably not. I think if it's not broke, don't fix it. I like the 12-2s. I like that idea for world title fights. Yeah. But I think the 3-minute rounds, for me, I don't think we need that. I think the girls produce great fights under the 2-minute banner.
I think it's like you have your Wimbledon, your men have 5 sets and the ladies have 3 sets. And maybe that's why it'll always stay. But I would like to see it go to 12-2s. And if Amanda and Katie get back around the table and go, all right, we can't get 3 minutes, but because this is such a massive big fight, let's do 12-2s. Let's be the groundbreakers and that. We'll have 12-2s for these undisputed unification fights like Tasha and Lauren that weekend.
But are you in principle against the argument of women fighting 3 minutes in a round?
No, I'm not. I'd be happy to see 3 minutes because I do feel some of them do turn into solid professional fighters. They know the ring craft, the timing. No, I'm not. I understand with the knockouts, it's hard to see on the eye. But like I said, that's the sport that everyone signs up for at the end.
So last week we saw what many consider to be a sort of bombshell announcement, which was Turki Alalshikh aligning himself with Dana White and TKO and announcing what we've been hearing, which is this boxing league, and we've spoken about it on numerous occasions.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything more sensational than a land grab from Turkey and Dana about acquiring the best fighters to fight in a new framework. I don't think it's going to be leagues spent. I don't think it's going to be the 6th fight's the 5th and the 4th fight's the 3rd and so on and so forth. I don't think we're going to be promoted and relegated. I think it's just another environment where the fighters, they've got the Ring magazine as the gatekeeper, as the credentials of what you're fighting for to some extent, which is why Turkey paid 10 million quid to buy off Oscar de la Hoya and turn it into the credibility issue. Dana White looks at events, and obviously his control over the UFC has been such that he's got a significant understanding and outlook of how this industry is held together. I think there's jeopardy there for Dana because the margins in MMA are different to the margins in boxing. The top level boxers are used to getting 90% of the take and leaving 10% for the promoters. In MMA it's different, so he probably needs to be a little bit careful about how he blends the two sports. But I look at it and say it's a simple opportunity. I think the WBC, the WBA and the IBF are going to watch it, and so the WBO, and go, hang on a second, you're potentially taking our businesses. I said to Eddie and Frank at the time, if he can acquire the knowledge to make fights so quickly, because he's the money in the room, he'll acquire knowledge to put events on. And what I think it is just an interesting opportunity, which is going to have to be very well funded to get the fighters to come away from their legacies of the WBCs and WBAs and fight for something, albeit the credentials of the Ring magazine. He's going to have to seed it with a lot of capital. And then we'll see if it's successful. And then we'll see what Frank does. Eddie's slightly different because he's diversified. He's got boxing, he's got snooker, he's got darts. He's got money behind him from selling big parts of equity in Matchroom for significant amounts of money. But I think it's just an interesting landscape and an inevitability because that's what they were always going to do. They couldn't own football. They couldn't do it in golf in terms of being able to control the sports and be able to achieve the outcomes that they want, which will be both beneficial for the sport and what they want. But they can do it in boxing because it's less structured. And that's kind of my views on it. But Dana White was speaking about it himself last week. Listen to what he had to say, and then we'll get into it.
When you talk about the business of boxing, one of the biggest issues in it is that the guys who are in boxing can't get on and they never do deals, and it took Turkey to come along with money to basically make them work together, right? So in that respect, when you've come on to do this for Turkey, do you almost have to cut out these other guys because they're just going to make your job harder, right? If you're having to negotiate with every promoter in the sun, do you have to come out and eventually just get rid of these guys, lock them in Alcatraz, like Turkey said, and just do it yourself?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm more focused on, if you think about the UFC when we bought the company, we had 3 letters, the old octagon, and 12 contracts. We had to build the thing from the ground up. I think that the sport of boxing is so broken, it needs to be built from the ground up again. And that's what I'm going to focus on doing. You know, he's got some commitments over the next 18 months with a lot of guys and a lot of fights and a lot of different promoters, but I talk a lot about USA's Tuesday night fights. You know, they put on like the best up and coming fighters all fought on that show and then became big pay-per-view stars. That's what it's the same thing that happened with the UFC. You know, we started on Spike TV, we built stars, and they became pay-per-view stars. I want to do the same thing with boxing. So
is there a world where you're on stage with De La Hoya and Bob Arum one day, all playing nice?
I mean, let's hope not. I would never say never, but that is not what I plan to do.
Well, a lot of the takeaways have been about the destruction of other people's businesses and the idea that Dana alluded to. No, he didn't allude to, he said it, that boxing is broken. When you hear that, Joe, is your takeaway, yeah, I agree, boxing is broken, it needs to be fixed? Or do you take a little bit of umbrage about that observation? It's him pitching a woo because that's what he wants to do, but do you agree with him?
No, I don't agree at all. When you look at 2024 and the fights that have delivered for the boxing fans, we managed to get to see Fury Usyk, we're seeing BTBF Bivol, there's talks now about Canelo and Terence Crawford. The big fights are happening. And
but isn't that, Joe, sorry to cut you off, isn't that because one man's walked in a room that's now part of an organisation that's suggesting that boxing's broken? Because if he steps out again, if he were to step out again and say, right, I'm taking all of my agenda, all of my money out of boxing, I've changed my mind, I want to go to a different sport, wouldn't boxing revert to the position that it was in where these big fights didn't happen, promoters couldn't sit in the same room, broadcasters were constantly compromised by one fighter being signed to one broadcasting network? So doesn't he have some validity in the fact that the only reason it isn't broken right now is because Turki Alalshikh rolled in with a big bag of money and fixed all the ails.
You've got a point there, Simon, for the fact, like I say, it took years for Mayweather-Pacquiao to happen. Do you understand? And when you look at Leonard and Hearns, they fought 23 and 25 in the prime, yet we never seen Mayweather-Pacquiao in the prime. So it's got a point to some extent, but as you said there, that's down to different networks. Obviously, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, another one, different networks. It's coming together because the public wanted to see it.
The public, listen, the politics of the sport was the reason that the sport was broken. It wasn't broken. I think broken's the wrong word. It's just the politics, different TV networks,
when you say
pay-per-view
politics,
splits.
what do you mean? You mean the
No, the TV networks, like one fighter's signed to, let's say, HBO, and another fighter's signed to Sky Sports, another one's signed to ESPN, and whoever shows that fight, at the big fights at the top, it was about what broadcaster was going to show it, and we didn't get the fights because of the pay-per-view splits and where the money was going to go, etc., and the fighters weren't happy. So that you had all these hurdles to overcome. Turkey's come in and taken all that away now, because he offers the fighters. So yes, the sport is in a much healthier place.
But Spencer, if he steps out again,
why
don't it just revert to what it was before?
Yeah, but
doesn't that mean by definition they have a point?
Yeah.
If they're a central force, everything goes through them. They have their own broadcasting relationship, so there's no conflict about who broadcasts it. They have all the fighters signed to it. All the fighters are obligated to fight one another in reasonable order. There's one belt at the end of it, so everyone knows where they stand. Doesn't he have some legitimacy in suggesting, I know that you're going to resist it because someone coming from the UFC telling everyone how to fix all their L's is probably a little bit irritating.
No, it's just...
But doesn't he have some point?
Absolutely, and it's just totally changing the landscape of the sport, and that might be needed going into this, but you go, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And to explain how those leagues will work, it's not about number 5 fighting number 6, etc. I think it's going to be a position where fighters start at the bottom and they try and work through the divisions of the leagues, and we have one champion, one ultimate champion, and let's say we've got 16 weight divisions at the moment. You get 8 weight divisions where it go back to the old school where you have bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, welterweight. You take all the super welters and
cruiserweights,
they'll all be gone.
There's 8 weight divisions. Going back to the old Ring magazine with the ring belt, 8 weight divisions. My interest is getting the fighters, because all the fighters that they want to bring into that will be under contract. Whereas with Al Heyman, Frank Eddig, Oscar De La Hoya,
it's going to take some time for sure.
But it'd be interesting to see it. I think it's good. Listen, we've had things that come with us. Prize Fighter, when that first came on, the World Boxing Super Series, what the Sauderlands did, that was brilliant. Obviously, Callum Smith went in and did really well. So it was a different format, and it's something different and interesting for no different than, I suppose, FIFA, where they always change now. Like the FA Cup, there's no replays, it's penalties at the end of extra time. They're always trying to change and
the
to
WBC
make that for the consumer that it's better for them to watch.
Well, you boys mentioned the promoters. Let's listen to young Master Hearn. He had a view on it last week.
I don't agree with the whole boxing's broken kind of thing. I think boxing's red hot. It's always been hot. Turkey's made it red hot, and I think there's a lot of potential. But anytime someone like Dana and a company like TKO and Nick Khan want to actively get involved in the sport, it's for a reason. And that reason is because he's flying at it. It's obviously no coincidence that the announcements come with the completion of the top-rank ESPN contract. So they clearly have the ESPN dates, which is a big start for them. But I don't really know. I mean, all I've known about for the last 6 months is that they've done a deal with TKO, and it's a league format for boxing.
So you don't know the detail?
Not really, no.
Are you expecting to meet with Dana White and Turkey and discuss?
So I've had loads of phone calls. Oh, well, Turkey. Okay. First thing you have to say is Turkey's a showman in a way as well. So, sometimes he'll do a video with me saying, "You are finished, stick to snooker and darts," and it's like, I don't know if we're going to have any involvement in the league. Do we want any involvement in the league? That's a decision we'll make as a business.
Do you want involvement?
I mean...
Or does it matter? I
mean, if His Excellency and Dana White are involved, would I like to be involved? Yeah, I mean, without seeing the structure, I think so, But at the same time, there's also Riyadh season events, Ring Magazine events, WBC Grand Prix, and we're doing a lot with His Excellency anyway. So I don't know if the league looks to encompass, encapsulate other promoters and fighters, or they're just going to say, no, we're going to build some talent and run this form.
If you can put yourself in the shoes of a governing body, a promoter, are you beginning to become a little bit unnerved, or for want of a better expression, shitting yourself about the future?
I suppose Eddie and Frank and Spencer, Oscar De La Hoya, they've all worked really well with Turk over the last 12, 18 months. But this is sort of like a curveball out of nowhere. And as you heard from Eddie there, he's not been privy to any conversation.
But he's known about it for 6 months.
Well, he's known about it, but he's still not been given a seat at the table to discuss. And I'm sure Turk will phone him because there'll be some fighters that Eddie Hearn represents that he'll want in the league. And it's the same with Frank Warren and Oscar. And like when you go in the World Boxing Super Series, that the promoters were given an allowance or some money to allow the fighters to enter the tournament. I think that's what will happen.
What do you think it means for the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, these belts?
Well, you seen on the stage last week, Canelo was going to put the WBC belt, and Turkey said no, just these two belts. And you've got to look at the fighters, like at the weekend, the governing bodies, they take 3%. So when you're in a unification like Bivol and BTB recently, that's 12% of your money gone for the governing bodies. And some fighters, I remember at one point, Canelo was going, I'm not fighting for titles no more. I'm just got to fight for the ring belt because I don't have to pay for it. And it's been going 100 years. And hence why now Turkey's on the back of it. Well, this was the original format, the ring belt, the Rocky belt, people call it. That's what they fight for. And we've got the 8 weight divisions. And if some fighters think, well, if I'm not paying 3% to these governing bodies, what does it matter? As long as I fight for the ring belt, everyone knows I'll be the number one. So I think the governing bodies, now obviously we've seen Maurizio back and forth with His Excellency last week. I think the governing bodies will be taking a keen eye on this and seeing what's happening as well.
I think there's definitely concern for the governing bodies in the longevity of it all. I think that they are going to try and get it under one banner, and what that is, I'm not sure. But the WBC, I think, have recognised that as well, and that's why they've gone with this Grand Prix, where it's a tournament for the younger fighters to try and develop and push on and kick on and stuff. So, look, I think that long term there is a worry for all the governing bodies because of what they're trying to do.
And I think it's been a long time overdue.
Yeah.
I'm glad, liven them up. I think some of the things that they do, certainly the WBC, are laughable.
Well, I think
they've had it their own way for too long, for too little.
Reinventing the sport for sure is going to give it a healthy appetite again, because if you look at the younger generation and the fans now, there's a lot of UFC fans go over to the States, more UFC fans than boxing fans because of the system of boxing and the fights not being made because of the politics. That will all change if they go under this one banner. But it's an interesting time. I think it's a huge job, Simon.
Do you think Dana White and Turki Alalshikh are a match made in heaven? Do you think they'll play nicely with one another?
Well, we'll know the answer to that in a year's time, won't we? Like I say, everything's a bed of roses when they first get together. But I'm sure it'll be an education process for Dana, listening to the funds that Turk has paid in the past for the events that we've had out in Riyadh and out in America and here in the UK. I won't be surprised if Dana talks Turk into being part of doing some UFC stuff.
But it's fascinating
PFL.
with the Saudis, and I'm going to ask you about your relationship with Turkey in a second. They're changing, though. I mean, they've been paying a lot of money for fights, but that ratio is beginning to change now. I think early doors, when they were first laying down the seed capital, they were paying 2 or 3 times what traditionally people would pay for certain purses of a certain fight against certain opponents with certain expectations of the fight. And that ratio is dropping now. It's dropping down to like 1.3, so 30% more. And in order for this to be the land grab that Turkey wants it to be, wants to own broadcasters, wants to destroy traditional broadcasting, wants everybody else to get their broadcasting content around boxing from him. So if someone like talkSPORT wants to see boxing stuff, they have to go through Turkey because he's got access to all the fighters, all the fights, and all the various different collateral. So I'm not sure how successful it will be. I think it will likely be based upon how much appetite the Saudis have to continue pumping inordinate amounts of money in to be able to get what they want from it. And it will cost them. I think they talked about 5 billion available, didn't they, the other day. And in order to steal the march from the WBC and IBF and all the legacy belts and use the Ring magazine and the wrapper, they're going to have to pump a lot of dough into it for a period of time to see how they can attract these fighters. Formats we don't know. Well, he's talking about 8-round fights. He's talking about, I'm sure we'll see AI innovation and we'll see some technological advances, but I think we'll basically see what we've seen previously just being run by Turki Alalshikh, Dana White, with a bit of innovation and maybe a better broadcasting platform where people see more visibility of boxing, because he wants boxing as a mainstream sport. He doesn't care about the perception it's parochial, it's only a small audience that watches boxing. He thinks, I can grow this sport to quite significant levels. So let's turn our attention to another one of your fighters, Lawrence Okolie.
Oh, the sauce.
Ranked number 1 in WBC, AJ ranked number 2. heavyweight, got the Riakporhe fight coming up. How's he finding life in the heavyweight division?
He's good. He's adapted to it like I knew he would. Listen, Lawrence's story for the last 12, 14 months, from where he was to where he is now, not just in the ring but outside the ring, it is a great story. And I've always said it, hope someone was filming this and documenting it at 24/7. Because from going back
one round at heavyweight, and he's number one in WEC.
I know, but listen, but back in November 23, December, he was depressed, losing to Chris Billam-Smith.
Yep.
Okay. He got in contact, Joseph Parker needed some sparring in the Mike Tyson gym. So Lawrence would come over, I'd do his corner for him. He did a couple of sparring sessions with him. We got on well with Lawrence, and then Lawrence come to Manchester. Then we said, right, let's move up to Bridgerweight. We beat a kid who blasted some kid out in a round, and no one expected that. And believe it or not, he went in as the underdog, Lawrence, for that, and he won in a round. Next time out, then we fought a heavyweight, and we moved him up to 18 stone because the opponent was 18 stone. I wanted to fight an 18 stone kid to see how Lawrence was against the big guys pushing and pulling, and he was a very good kid. I wouldn't say he's elite top 10, but he was a good kid to give me an idea what Lawrence had. But because of Lawrence not making weight no more and filling out and growing, his punching power is unreal.
How have you installed though that mental confidence in him, Lawrence? Because like you say, when he come to you, he's sort of broken after the Chris Billam-Smith fight. How do you reinstall that confidence into a fighter? What is it, Joe, that you have to do that changes them?
I just took him out of. He'd just become a dad. So there was that pressure. His career was singing. I took him out and brought him to Manchester, and I called it, you go into Apollo Creed's gym in the Rocky films. You come in there, you come into a gymnasium, you've got a load of young, hungry fighters alongside you, alongside Natasha, Jonas, Jack Massey, Callum Johnson, Paul Butler, all young, hungry kids there as well, and you're treated no different. Where I feel out there in Dubai, it's a little bit laid back, it's not this. So it was just working on him mentally, and I wanted to try and break him, and I couldn't break him, and I thought, nah, you've got more resolve than people give you credit for. So hence then why how I said fights have gone, they've gone the way that is. The second one I didn't expect a round. I expected, like Lawrence said, round 5 or 6, but he landed and that was it. But he has that confidence, he has that swagger, he's got a bit of money in his back pocket, his restaurant's doing well, life's good, the baby's thing, and he's in the room now, and now he's ranked WBC #1. Obviously, Cabiel is the interim champion, but we'll see what happens. But he's in that position, and I've got a confident fighter. And we took the call. We accepted to step in when he pulled out, and we were due to fight Joseph Parker, but he ended up training Bicola. It was between them two, and they chose Bicola. But we accepted it. We were up the road, and obviously it didn't come out. But Lawrence's confidence in himself now. I know you made the point there, only one fight at heavyweight, and he's WBC #1. But I do feel because of him winning the WBC Bridgerweight, them governing bodies look kindly on you moving up the division.
I know they do. But I remember speaking to you, I think my memory serves correctly, about you getting involved with him, and you talked about certain expectations of him. Yeah. And if it wasn't going to be what you expected from him, you weren't going to get involved, and you weren't going to waste your time with that. Because the criticism about Lawrence is that, I like Lawrence, don't get me wrong, but some of the fights that he's been in have been...
Oh, there's a bad smell after him.
Pretty bad smell.
Yeah.
So when you say he's the real deal at heavyweight, and we look around the heavyweight division, and we look at people like Cabiel, who I personally like a lot, and I think you do too.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, I think he's brilliant. And you say that Lawrence is the real deal. That must mean that you have an expectation of him potentially winning a world title.
I wouldn't be training him if I didn't sign me that.
So what's the difference in Lawrence? Is it simply the fact he's going into a weight class that's more natural for him?
I think that there's a lot of things. I never ask the fighters what they did in the past, coaches or anything else, but he tells me a few things, and there's a lot of things that he didn't do. And obviously, them 10 weeks when he was in Moss Side, I tried to break him, and I couldn't break him, and I pushed and pulled. And
was breaking him involved?
Breaking him goes like in a very... stressful training sessions, getting him to the breaking point, like you have to go over that wall or you don't go over the wall. Like so just before Poland, he did 12 rounds with 3 different kids, and he took round 9 off. At the end of round 12, everyone was clapping. I went, no, one more, and I put the fresh kid in for round 13, and he looked at me and I thought, I'm got a duck here, because you could see it in his eyes, but he didn't. He went out and he won round 13, and I thought, nah, you can dig down where you need to dig down. And that holding, I'm trying to get him out all that. We haven't done no holding, but that smell, as you said, and I say, still lingers a little bit, and we can't allow that. I'm sort of like calling the UK Wilder for his performance that he's done all since, but I do feel he's got the boxing acumen now, he's got the power, he's got the confidence in his ability, and he's back, and more so without having to make weight. And I know people quick say, oh, look at the statement on the scales. Well, Larry Holmes, Tyson Fury, they're not body beautiful.
Yeah.
We're talking about boxing, and if there's a fragmentation of the heavyweight title after Usyk and Daniel Dubois, Lawrence is in a good place to challenge for it, and I think he can win a world heavyweight title.
Give us a roadmap for him. He's got Richard Riakporhe there. He comes through that one on April the 5th.
That's not an easy fight.
Yeah, that's not an easy fight. It's a fight that should have happened at cruiserweight, now happening, and it is a tough fight. But if he does come through that fight, what is the roadmap for him? Because as you said there, the interim champion is Caballero, and the undisputed looks like it's going to possibly happen again with Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. So if those titles are tied up, where do you take him if he comes through on the 5th?
Well, I think once them belts have come through, they'll be fragmented. I think, I'm not just touching on whether Turki Alalshikh goes, listen, them belts are gone, you fight for the ring belt or whoever moving out. I think he said something to Bivol last week, you know, who's looked after you. Do you understand? And maybe that conversation might be happening with a few fighters, I don't know, but I do feel it'll open the door. And if it's Caballero Lawrence, it's a hard fight to win a world title, but it's a fight, obviously seeing Caballero up close a couple of times now and seeing Chang drop him, that there is a vulnerability, like anyone can get hit in the chin, and that's what's exciting about the heavyweights. But that's it, we've just got to be patient and wait for the opportunity.
Is this a better fight between Riakporhe and Akoli at heavyweight than it would have been at cruiserweight?
Yeah, I think so. My only worry is with the two of them that after a few rounds sizing up, we don't go back to both of them. I'm not saying like stick insects, but where they all end up getting holding all the time and that type of stuff, and it becoming quite a bit of a bad event. We really wanted the Joe Joyce fight. I thought that was the ideal fight for Lawrence Akoli. It was agreed on, and then it didn't happen. And then when he pulled out Dylan White the other day, I said, Lawrence, let's try and take that. So I just thought Joe Joyce was a motivated Joe Joyce because he wants to come back to say that he's not finished. And then Lawrence wants to show everyone that he is a genuine heavyweight. And it was just, well, if you can't beat him, then you've got nothing. And if you can't beat him, it was at crossroads for both of them. And it was a good fight for Lawrence. And if Lawrence could have done a number and Joe, he made a statement.
Were you focusing on weight here with Lawrence as well? Like, you know, because heavyweights obviously can come in whatever they want, but there is an optimum weight for them.
And I know his optimal weight. We've done that over the two camps now. I know what he performs at, and regardless of the weight, he was. I heard someone comment about the statement scales last time, but you're not in the gym. You didn't see the round sparring. Nothing's changed. He's still running around the track like Hartley here. He absolutely putting the work in, and if he wasn't, I would have nothing to do with it. I fly out now this week to carry on training him out there, out in Dubai, and. Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but like I said, in a great position.
Do you expect to see a stoppage in that fight between Riakporhe?
I think we've got two big hitters, and I do with Lawrence, yeah.
I mean, Richard didn't let his hands go in the CBS fight, did he?
No.
And he was mostly weight trained as well, and you'll see a different
That's the fascination about this fight, is going in at heavyweight here. You've got two guys that were struggling at the weight at cruiserweight, and that creates a negative performance. So I understand that totally from both sides. Well, I think that we'll see a more aggressive side, obviously, from Lawrence, from what you're telling me, and I think we'll see that from Riakporhe. It's a better fight actually at heavyweight than it was at cruiserweight. It's a good fight.
Yeah, I think so too. I hope it is, because I like both belts, and what I don't want is a stinker. Yeah, I think it has the propensity to be that. I hope it's a good fight, because I don't think if either one of them wins on the back of a stinker, I don't think it helps either one of them particularly.
See, the thing with Lawrence, I said to Lawrence, yeah, we'd fight Charles Martin. Yeah, we'll fight. They put loads of names to us, Ortiz, Charles Martin, all that, and we said yes to them all. So it's not like we're not. And then we've ended up with Riakporhe, and I said, well, he really doesn't do nothing for us, and this was before his latest ranking. So Lawrence now has got everything to lose, where Richard has everything to win. So that's thrown into the pot now. So we're like in a Champions League semi-final here now. Do you understand?
But it's a good British fight.
Oh, yeah, it's a great British fight.
It should get people's interest.
100%, definitely, when them two start going at the press.
We'll look forward to it. We'll look forward to it. Joe, I want to talk to you about another one of your former fighters in what I consider to be one of the best fights of the year, if not the. I mean, I know we're only in March. I think it's going to stand up there for the rest of the year as well, which is Callum Smith.
Yeah.
In the fight against Josh Boatsy. I mean, I phoned you before I did that up front with Callum Smith to get some background on Callum. And when I spoke to Callum, obviously he'd come off the back of the Beterbiev loss and he wasn't sure what he was going to do, and he only wanted meaningful fights. That was some performance, wasn't it?
It was an unbelievable performance. The bad thing, it was so early in the card, and it wasn't in the UK. But the trouble is we're all wise after the event, because that would have been a hard sell at the hotel, because both of them not big ticket sellers, and that would have been a hard sell at Liverpool. But the two of them, that show, that fight, that's a proper throwback fight. Full credit to Josh Buatsi. I don't know how he stood up from some of them punches. And just when he was on the point of getting fingered, he'd come back and catch Callum with a headshot, and then Callum suffered a nasty cut and another cut inside it. But the two of them, it was just like a proper old school. We always harp on about the 80s and the fights way back then, your Holyfields and stuff like that. But Callum Smith, Josh Buatsi, that's a fight that'll stand the test of the time.
Were you surprised? I mean, I think I like all the Smith brothers. I mean, you were obviously with Paul when he lost to Arthur Abraham, weren't you?
Yeah.
And which was, by the way, unjust in that fight. Or got a draw, didn't he, first time around? And he won the first fight, didn't he? But did you see Callum being able to roll back a little bit? I mean, the level that he operated on, but just Josh picked the wrong fight there, didn't he, in terms of who the opponent was?
I think because Callum, they've always seen Callum as an upright kid and a sharp check left hooker. But I know Callum has got that grit and the desire and that backbone in him that, no, if you want it, I'll stand and have it with you to an extent. And Josh Buatsi came with him. And listen, you can see on the TV, Callum got caught with the odd body shot where he thought, oh, he's got to go down. Yeah. But that resolve, Callum's like, no. And I felt there was an awful lot on the line for Callum. And I thought, Callum, yeah, you lost to BTBF, you lost to me, but I can't lose domestically. I'm top dog domestically. Right. And that was another edge to it, do you understand? And he did it, he dug in, and it didn't surprise me. I thought it'd get to a dogfight sooner or later. And no, but Callum, it was just a brilliant fight. I'd love to go back and watch it again. It was that good a fight.
I also think when people talking about a calculated gamble that it was for Joshua Buatsi, which it was in many ways, but we must remember that he's been a pro for 9 years. He had to step up at some point, and looking at it on paper, you go, Callum Smith's been there, and how much desire's left, and all of those, you take all those into consideration. If you're in Buatsi's shoes, you go, this is the time, we've got to go. But I think they both showed great resolve and come through the way they did.
In terms of matchmaking, I personally, I don't know what you think, Joe, I think he would have been better off, and they couldn't make it for a variety of reasons. But when you fight, with due respect, Dan Aziz and Willie Hutchinson, and then you step in against a world-class operator like Callum Smith, who if he's still in the right frame of mind and wanting it as much as potentially we allude to because he had things to prove, you put yourself in the way of jeopardy, and it would have been better off with Yard rather than Callum Smith.
Yeah, Buatsi Yard was a big London fight that I think everyone's missed. Listen, Josh can come back and still do that, but will it sell? I suppose so. Anthony Yard, Tunde, they're all great talkers. He's fighting Lyndon Arthur. But for Callum Smith now, listen, he's got to sit there, wait for one of the belts to come apart, and then obviously fight for a world title. And that's his goal, to be a two-weight world champion. It was always in him, always destined to be, and he has got it. And if you look at who he's lost to, Canal and BTBF, it's not a bad resume, is it?
Exactly. We see the rematch now of Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, I realise that you ain't going to be getting any Christmas cards anytime soon from his dad, but
no Chinese from his dad.
No, absolutely.
Bosh.
Yeah, I mean,
listen. Look, I stand by what I say. You know,
I don't think
look at it, and I've watched the
wrong,
fight
actually.
again, and there was a one winner for me, and that was Dave Allen. I thought he's hard done by, and that's what it is. You know, we're entitled to our opinion. So if people are getting upset about it and emotional, you understand because he's invested. It's his son. We get the fight again.
But Johnny's done the right thing, though.
That's what I'm saying. That we get the fight again, and that's great that Johnny Fisher stepped up and gone, look, let's do it. Let's go in for the second fight because it shows his character, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great fight.
What did you make of the first fight, Joe?
No, it's a very good fight. I think obviously the Dave Allen, it's which Dave Allen turns up on the night.
Yeah.
Dave Allen can blow hot and cold. I think that fight, he came with it all because he was written off. But now Johnny's more aware of what Dave brings to the table, and can Dave be any better for this rematch now? Do you understand? He's hurt him, he's caught him a couple of times. I mean, he knows who's his confidence lifted. Is he now just for this rematch, or can he get the win this time and kick on and relight his career?
But Johnny Fisher will have learnt some big lessons in that fight, won't he?
Oh,
he would have learnt huge lessons, and he would have to start the favourite going into this one, Johnny Fisher, because I think he'll go back to the drawing board. Mark Tibbs is a great trainer as well, and they would have worked on stuff, and they'll go in there, and you'll see a different Johnny Fisher for sure.
Yeah, no, it'll be a good fight.
We saw Harlem Eubank out on Friday.
Yeah.
Yellow shorts, red gloves.
Yeah.
Chris Eubank senior in the corner, strutting around.
Chris is,
Was he sat there? Yeah.
I think, listen, I think he's a great story, Harlem Eubank. I really do. I think that he's...
Why is he not getting much attention?
I think he is starting to get more attention now against Tyrone McKenna at the weekend. I thought he put in a great performance. That fifth round when he just sort of timed the shot, slipped, uppercut, put McKenna down. He's a tough kid, McKenna. And he went out there, he got the job done eventually in the 10th round. I think he's improving all the time, Harlem Eubank. And I think he's at that stage now, 21-0, 9 KOs. Maybe he needs to sit down on his feet a little bit more because he's a little bit, keen to get the job done. But I like what I see with him, and I think that Chris in his corner, and it's obviously Chris is pushing. Did you see, by the way, that Chris was going on about this fight with Conor Benn? Chris Eubank Jr. is not going to happen. Harlem will be ready. I don't know if that's just a bit of kidology and just trying to get his name more out there.
Well, he's been saying that for a long time, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He said it when he came on a show. He said it when he came on, did Up Front with me. Apparently, he said it to Turki Alalshikh the other day. I have the ability to stop this fight.
Yeah.
I stopped the first fight. Yeah. It was me that stopped
I don't
the
think he
first
stops
fight.
anything,
No,
if I'm honest.
the failed drugs test that Conor took. You know.
Yeah, I don't think he stops anything. But look, let's focus on Harlem here. Like, I thought it was a good performance. I think that he's an improving fighter, and I think that he will get his opportunity.
I don't know whatever happened, because Boxer and Ben Shlom, they brought Adam Aziz and Harlem Eubank into the middle of the ring and announced their fight.
It was on.
And whatever happened to it?
Yeah.
Because that would have been a great fight for both fighters at the time, and especially on the platform and Sky.
Didn't Adam Aziz get all caught up with the Dalton Smith argument and all of a sudden fell away, didn't it?
But they agreed and the head-to-head in the ring.
I think
Whatever
terms were agreed, and for one reason or another, the fight fell on its face, which is a shame, because it was a great fight for both of them at this stage of their career. And a loss for either one of them was not the end of the world. They could rebuild, come back. So it was a great fight at that time, and for some reason we didn't get it. But maybe we get that fight now.
Harlem Eubank is improving all the time, and he is becoming a bit of a threat. And not where people thought early on, I wouldn't say joke, that's too disrespectful, but didn't really take him serious, do you understand? All of a sudden he's been maturing and taking box life and maturing into a good fighter. Touching on the old man, I just hope he turns up fight week for Ben Eubank.
He's got to. Yeah. I'm sure he will.
Walk in with your sheriff's badge, let young Chris go, Dad, you have this stage, do you know what I mean? And just take everything
him, by the way? Because you've got a relationship with Chris, haven't you?
I haven't spoken to him for a while.
Right.
I haven't spoken to him for about 2 or 3 months. We crossed paths in the foyer the other day in one of the hotels where Turkey was. I can't go without asking you about the Eubank-Ben fight. I mean, do you love all this stuff? I mean, the press conferences have been full of controversy. The fight, to me, I rail against it because I don't think it's a proper fight because people are interested in it. But when I see Conor going up from 147 to 160, I know he's walking around fighting in 154, and his dad tells everyone he's walking around at 170, 175 as a walk-around rate, and Eubank's coming down to 160. I just think it's a fight that's being fought because of their parents. Yeah, and it doesn't have the legitimacy. But you, as a traditionalist and as a great boxing man, do you like it? Do you like all?
No, not really.
You don't like it?
The reason being, and it's not pouring water on it, is if Spencer was fighting in the day at featherweight and said, "Do you know what? I fancy my chances against the lightweight champion or light welterweight champion and take him on." Well, you want to take him on, you take him. But you don't say, "I'll take you on, but you've got to be this way or not that way." That hydration clause, and they're saying Conor Benn walks around this. Well, what are you putting a hydration clause in Eubank Jr. for? I don't like that. No. If you want to beat the man, we'll beat him at his best, not dehydrated. And there's nothing to suggest, and this is nothing against Conor, he's coming around, there's nothing to suggest Conor can deliver because no one's seen him in a title fight at Southern. English, British, European. They haven't. And looking at his last performance in America or two that he had while this was going,
was it?
Yeah, there was nothing to suggest you could beat Eubank Jr. Now you look at Eubank Jr.'s resume. Yes, it's 35, 36, but he was in the World Boxing Super Series against George Groves, a big super middle. He went to Turkey and knocked out Yildirim. Then he ragdolled James DeGale round the ring. He's got that experience, and when he's motivated and focused, we've seen what he did to Liam Smith. Liam Smith. I think Eubank Jr. just think he's too big, hits too strong, and that's it.
Right, that's it for episode 111 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver, and of course Joe Gallagher. Nice to see you. Keep well.
Yeah, cheers.
And we'll see you next time we're out.